On today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, y'all see the smile. Big Sarge is back. Today we're talking the defense. A lot of doubters for Jalen Pitre going into his year 3, and I think he quiet him. But we got to talk about the potential All-Pro Defensive Player of the Year, Derek Stingley. So don't go nowhere. We're talking defense here on today's show.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, Texan fans across the nation, to this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. To all of our first-time listeners and viewers, thank you for stopping by. All we ask is 3 favors. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And to all of our players from the Himalayas, welcome back to the show, families. We appreciate y'all. Can't wait to talk Texans today. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, Brian, Big Sarge, Bearfield. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get 3 weeks worth of free NFL ticket time on YouTube and YouTube TV. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Sarge, take us away.
And on today's show, we're going to talk about the bounce back game from the reserve defensive backups against the New York Giants. We'll talk about the exclusive interview that we had with Derek Stingley Jr. and how he mentioned his being able to be in the second year of this defensive system and how it helps him out a lot, along with linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair and Jalen Pitre.
Yes.
Guess who's back? Back again. That's right. Jalen Pitre quiets the doubters.
And I think that's an important area for us to start in. But before we talk football, before we dive into the Houston Texans on the field, Sarge, you had an opportunity to go get some free meals at the NRG Stadium. The Houston Texans got a new menu that they'll be rolling out for the fans starting this season. I don't want to get too much into it, but for the fans that are listening and for the fans that are watching, if you could say, guys, y'all got to try this one item, what would it be?
The Truth Barbecue, man. I think it's going to be available on all levels, and that Truth Barbecue is amazing. And I hope they will sponsor this show so we can get free meals, so we can take that little card and just be like, hey, Locked On Texas is in the building. Let me get some of that brisket, though. Oh, man, that Truth Barbecue is amazing. And, it was an honor for the Houston Texans and the Airmark Sports and Entertainment department, along with Houston Texans president Greg Grisham, to have us out there today. Over 80 new menu items, and they look good. But that barbecue is the truth.
That's good to hear. You know what else was the truth, guys? The Texans defense this past Saturday helped the New York Giants to only 10 points. Now, I know a lot of you guys may be thinking, but it's the New York Giants, or Daniel Jones was their quarterback. Make no mistake about it. Even when we talk about the reserves, later in the game, defensively, this was a much better outing for the Houston Texans. Created 5 turnovers, 2 interceptions, 1 pick six, a couple fumbles. Lonnie Johnson, tweet through it, got in on the action. But I think the player that set the tone the most, undoubtedly to me, was third-year safety, now playing around the line of scrimmage, nickel cornerback Jalen Pitre. Got a pick six on the second drive of the game for the Houston Texans, and I don't want to diminish what Derek Stingley did on the opposite side because we're going to talk about him. But got the pick six on the second drive of the game for the Houston Texans. And if it wasn't for a couple of penalties, that tackle that he had, you would have seen a couple more. Got into the backfield, big tackle for loss. Did a very good job of taking on the offensive lineman, number 72 for the New York Giants. He tried to roll out, took him on, get out the way, big boy, and help his team make the tackle. He was everywhere. He's playing like a bat out of hell, but you see the control, aggression, and Azeez Al-Shaair, what he said to today really caught my eye. He said, if you're soft, you may need to go somewhere else. You might make it in the league, but you won't make it here. We all have a job. You won't be great here. Get with it or get lost. He said that to DJ Bieniemy, our good friend over at ESPN. But if you are soft, you are not a Houston Texan, and you just see the aggressiveness and confidence exuding from Jalen Pitre. And I think he's quieting a lot of the doubters. A lot of people had questions whether or not you can trust him to be a competent defender. Well, kudos to D'Amico Ryans, Matt Burke, understanding that we have a talent, and in year one, maybe we didn't utilize his strengths to the best of his abilities to help this defense. Throughout the summer, let's find a way to get it done. Yeah. And the permanent move, somewhat of a permanent move, playing at nickel, being an extension of that linebacker group, playing around the line of scrimmage, I think is going to do wonders, not only for Jalen Pitre himself, but for that defense, and it's going to help this defense be one of the best defenses in the NFL, Sarge.
John, you're a former athlete, and I'm not just talking about on Madden. You play football, Johnny. You know what the coach used to say? What's the one thing the coach used to say outside of you can't have no more Gatorade? You
on
practice how you play.
Yeah, I was on the line. We missed it.
You practice how you play, John. And that interception that he had on Daniel Jones on Saturday, I seen that exact same play happen last week at practice. They were in the one-on-ones. He had to hold Tank. Tank came out, and I think that Tank broke the wrong way on the route, and CJ expected him to go another way. And when CJ threw the ball, Pitre broke on the ball, got the interception, returned it for a pick six. Exactly the same way it happened with the quarterback being under duress, throwing the ball to a spot. Pitre picked it off and ran it back. I think that what the Houston Texans did, what Matt Burke did, Matt Burke said that one of the reasons they moved him to the nickel position, that nickel safety hybrid that he's playing, is because it helps slow him down. Last season, he played with too much aggression. He was over aggressive, and I get it. You're trying to show off. You're trying to prove to the new head coach, the new defensive coordinator, that you do belong here. You do belong on this team. You do belong as a start in your starting safety position. Matt Burke specifically pointed out that during I think it was maybe like the second or third play against the Pittsburgh Steelers where he was blitzing, and he said in the past he would have shown the blitz. He said the Steelers actually tried to get him to show blitz early, and he said Jalen sat there and he was patient. When they hiked the ball, that's when he blitzed. He said that's what we can see. That's where he's taking that next step. And so I like the fact that they moved him towards the line, closer to the line, because he's also one of those people that he has to have that contact. He's a contact magnet.
He's a contact magnet.
He is he doesn't he can play over the top, but it's almost like that. I gotta have them hits. I gotta have them hits. And especially after the amount of tackles that he had in year one. So he needs that type. And what D'Amico has done is said, okay, we're going to give you the tackling and we're going to give you the coverage. We're going to mix and match it. When I asked Jalen Pitre, I said, when you come to the line, like you love being next to the line. He said, Sarge, I don't run from no smoke. He said, I don't run from no smoke. He said, I run to smoke. He said, but now I'm learning how to run to smoke with patience. And so I love what the Houston Texans have done with him. And the fact that he's going up in that nickel cover, in that nickel position that he's playing in the one-on-ones and in practice. I mean, you got to line up in front of Tank Dell. You got to line up in front of Stephon Diggs. They're going to teach you how to cover these routes. And so I love what the Houston Texans have done with Jalen Pitre.
And I also want to say, the few times that I was out there, Sarge, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been out there more than I have. You see those guys on the sideline. And at one point, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago, it seemed like Stephon and Jalen Pitre was just having a lot of words with one another at practice.
I got to tell you this, John. It's trash talking all day
but
long.
But when they get to the sidelines, The trash talk is there now. Hey, listen, this is how we could have did. So like they talking, but they learning with one another. Am I wrong or?
Yeah, wait. The trash talking stops after practice.
Okay.
During practice, like they still talking trash because they're on opposite sides of the field. So when they were practicing in Ohio, they were going at it, and Jalen Pitre was calling Stephon Diggs out from the other side of the field to the point where Azeez had to come and say, "Hey man, calm down, man. We still got practice." Jalen Pitre was hyped, and so last week after Jalen got to speaking to the media, Stephon Diggs waited on him to finish his media availability. And then after his media availability, those two went through one-on-one with each other, just walking through. Stephon telling Jalen, hey, this is how I beat you here. And Jalen telling him, well, this is how I played you. And I mean, literally everybody else was gone. Stephon Diggs waited for him. And I got that picture. I put it out on social media. But before they got ready to leave, I asked Stephon Diggs, I asked Stephon Diggs and Jalen Pitre, I said, hey, who's the best trash talker? And Jalen said, yeah, it's him. And he's like, me, of course. He said, come on, Sarge, it's me. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I just met you, Stephon, but still, he talk a lot of trash.
Nah, that's good to hear. And what I like about that is you got guys, and they're not going to say that in the media about Stephon. They're not gonna put that on the big screen about Stephon.
For sure.
In terms of him being a leader. And he is a leader. And you just see how much Tank Dell has gravitated to him. I know this is the defensive day, but getting better on defense, your teammate got to help you get better. And Stephon has been a leader at practice around his franchise in that building for the Houston Texans. But with Jalen, he's kind of like that kid in school. If he's in the back of the class, you're not going to get the best out of him.
Right.
So with Jalen, if he's always back deep, you're not going to get the best version of Jalen Pitre. But, son, I need you to sit up front. I need you to come up front. Yeah. I need for you to have all of the work and everything you know how to do in front of you. Because now when I trust you to get it done, if you gravitate back a little bit to that middle row, you know what you're doing. The confidence is there. You can still get that work done. And I'm kind of talking about myself a little bit. I used to have to sit in front of the class because if I was in that back, I got a lot of joking and messing up going on. But for Jalen, it's good to see him get that confidence going. And now it's kind of like no matter – hopefully we see this throughout the season, but no matter where you put him, if he starts out hot and confident and making those routine plays that we saw him make more of his rookie year compared to his sophomore year, then you can start seeing some of those pick sixes,
one thing that helped him, John, is, and he admitted this, rookie Kalen Bullock. He admitted, he said to us that Kalen Bullock has showed him different techniques of playing the safety position that has helped him out a lot. And so, it takes a big person to be able to admit that.
When you got championship aspirations, you got to lean on one another. And this team has really, compared to the Deshaun Watson teams, from what I've heard and learned, this team seems to lean on one another more, and it starts at the top with DeMeco Ryans. And DeMeco Ryans talked about Jalen Pitre, said Jalen's done a great job. That's who's Jalen been since I got here. Jalen brings great energy. He's one of the smartest football players on our team. He's a leader. He's everything you want in a player. He brings it all. I'm fired up to continue to see him get more and make more plays. He's fun to watch. He's excited. He provides energy to our team. Jalen has done an outstanding job. We talked about DeMeco Ryans protecting his players like in terms of Dameon Pierce, but as a player's coach, he does a very good job of making sure the recognition is just due. Now, on the flip side, we talk about one DB. We got to talk about the DB for the Houston Texans. Yesterday, Sarge, in Rapid Fire, you said one word to describe Derek Stingley, Island.
Yes.
So we got a one-on-one exclusive with Derek Stingley on the opposite side of the break. And how does Azeez Al-Shaair fit with this team, and where can he take this defense? We got more on the other side of the Locked On Texans podcast. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel here on the show. Just last week, FanDuel was hooking up all their customers throughout the summer with a booster bonus daily. FanDuel is still America's #1 sportsbook, and they're still hooking you up. We got a little something different for you right now. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season game Sunday afternoon, out-of-market games for the rest of the season. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. It's that easy. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. As promised, we have an exclusive one-on-one courtesy and by way of Big Sarge, Brian Bearfield, with Derek Stingley. He's going to talk about a lot how he is looking at this wide receiver room. I think that's important to highlight from a cornerback perspective so you guys can get an insight on just how good that room is. And he also highlights Azeez Al-Shaair, who I think can be one of the saving graces for this team at the end of the season to get this team over the hump. Sarge, you ready?
I am ready.
Let's get it. Listeners and viewers, Derek Stingley Jr., The Island.
Last week, John Mechie said that the receiver room reminds him a lot of when he was at Alabama. Do you see any similarities to this receiver room as far as with the talent that they have to when you were at LSU?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like the Bama, the room, who was it? It was Mitch. It was J-Mo. Is that the year you're talking about when J-Mo was there, or he just saying in general?
He was just saying in general.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, that makes sense because you got all kind of receivers doing different things. Like Diggs, the dude what Diggs always done. Tank quick, but he can go down the field. Nico, he can do pretty much everything, but he 6'6", whatever he is. So, I can see those similarities. It makes sense.
Was it like that for you? Like you see that similarity when you were at LSU as well, when you were going up against those guys?
Oh, yeah, because at LSU, it was pretty much, Jamar, Justin, but we also had, like, speed people like Derek Dillon, Trey Palmer, who with the Bucks. Like we had – yes.
And so, on yesterday you had 2 picks. One was a pick 6. How are you starting to feel yourself being growing in this second year of this defense?
I mean, this defense put me in a situation or in a position to see the ball or be able to play the receiver and put myself in a position to see the ball and make a play on the ball. So I feel like anytime I'm able to see the ball, whenever the receiver sees it, I mean, I just feel like I can make something happen with that. So I appreciate all our defense coaches.
Being in man-to-man, is that one of your strong suits? Is that one of your strong points?
I mean, me personally, I like to say I'm well-rounded, but I mean, it really doesn't matter, to be honest. Like if I'm a man, pressed or off, as long as I just stick to my keys, I feel like I can get the job done.
Just the competition aspect of it, though, right? It brings out, the look, as Larry would say, brings out the dog in you, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Because they make a play, they gonna talk some noise or celebrate and do all this and that. So that's for sure.
Last question I have for you: how much has Azeez being in that middle linebacker spot helped you all on the defensive side of the ball?
Oh man, I mean, without him, we wouldn't be as far as we are as a defense right now, or just as a team. Like he one of the people that on the field, off the field, is like you just need him around. Like he gonna make sure everybody do what they gotta do, and he gonna make sure he does it himself. Like he's just accountable, and he hold everybody else accountable.
One more I have for you. Do you ever stop thinking about football? Man, the other day y'all practiced for 2 hours in the heat, and then I seen you walking up the stairs with your helmet still on, like you was ready to go. Like you could have practiced another hour and a half. Do you ever stop thinking about football?
I mean, I'll be thinking about plays that should have been made that I let slide or whatever. But if I would, I could.
All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right, man. All right. I see you on Friday.
Stay in the weight room. Sarge, stay in the weight room, right? That was Derek Stingley, guys. And you saw the numbers: 3 targets, 0 receptions, 1 interception, 0 reception, 1 interception. Could have had 2 to kick off the game. And I really believe this is an all-pro year for him, year 3. And he's always going to be linked to Sauce Gardner. He's not the talker that Sauce Gardner is, but boy, is he a difference maker that this team desperately needs. And before we talk about Azeez, if you could tell the listeners and viewers one thing about Derek Stingley, who, again, doesn't like to talk that much, what would it be for people to sit back and say, you know what, this is by far the best cornerback we've had in franchise history?
The one thing that makes Derek Stingley Jr. stand apart from everybody else, and I would say, you know, from the cornerbacks that I've covered, or the defensive backs that I've covered since I've been covering football and watching football too, he's a football junkie. He is a football savant. I asked him after the game on Saturday, hey, man, is there any route that you have not seen? He's like, there's not one that I have not seen. He said, and then he started naming receivers. Like, he told me about a double move, a triple move that Devontae Adams tried to put on him his rookie year. He said he tried to put him on it twice. Like, in order to be able to recall that type of stuff, it's one of those. That's one of those guys who you just like, you know, he knows the game. On his one thing that led to his interception on Saturday, he said, "Well, I knew the ball hadn't came out yet, so it's got to come out here sometime soon." He said, "So I just turned my head and looked, and there was the ball." And so he was also on he's so good, and what they've done with him is during that play, he didn't even have no over the top help. It was just him. One-on-one, and you look, I bet you Jalen Hyde don't want to go back on that island. Like, I'm not gonna lie, John. I watched the best of the best. I watched Deion Sanders. I've watched Richard Sherman. I've watched Revis Island. I've watched some of the best when it comes to playing that cornerback position. John, he's one. He's one of them. I am not afraid to say
it's a name you didn't say that he really reminds me of, because I believe that not only can he take your receiver out the game, but he can get those interceptions. And I think he reminds me
from the Cowboys.
Thank y'all for watching Locked On. But he reminds me so much of Champ Bailey.
Ooh, yes.
You know, Champ will take your receiver out the game, but every now and then they want to try him.
Yes.
And for 2 or 3 years stretch, before it was Revis Island, this is early 2000, Champ was taking it out the air. And so last year, I think one of the better plays of the entire NFL season for a defensive player. I don't know the coverage. I go back and forth. Was it cover 4, cover 6, cover 9? I don't know what it was, but it looked like on the field, it looked like Jalen didn't do what he was supposed to do. This was against the Broncos. We were in the press box, and Stingley read that play. Like you said, route recognition. He understands it. Comes from a football family, football background. Stingley read that play to a T and grabbed
2
it out
interceptions that game, right?
2 interceptions that game. Okay. But that was the one I sat back. I looked at Cody. I looked at you. I looked at Miss Kim Davis of Chalk Talk, and I said, yeah, the conversation's got to stop. He's healthy, and he's playing like the best cornerback in the NFL. And Houston was struggling in that game against the Broncos.
Yeah.
So Stingley is that guy, and I think we're going to look at the campaign this year for All-Pro and potentially Defensive Player of the Year. But before we close out, Agent Zero to the rescue for Houston. No Christian Harris so far to this point for the Houston Texans, dealing with an injury, expecting more out of Henry To'oTo'o. Opened up talking about Jalen Pitre, how he's been an extension of that linebacker room in a sense, but Azeez has been everything the Houston Texans has needed and more. On the field, off the field, playing in a live game, at practice. You've had an opportunity to talk with him on multiple occasions and just pick his brain. How essential will Azeez be for this defense when it's all said and done for the Houston Texans?
Well, real quick, before I talk about Azeez, Nico Collins said in the press conference today that Derek Stingley is an All-Pro. So y'all are on the same page. And maybe he'll send you a couple of dollars through Cash App. But
hopefully, because I'm a receiver too, Nico.
Of cash.
If there's a big boy league, like strictly, you got to be 290, 300 and up.
Yeah.
I'm probably the best receiver out there, and don't let me get no safety action.
Oh, they're gonna timestamp that too, because you said you was a receiver. Hey, so anyway, talking about Azeez. So when we look at the Houston Texans, right? The first thing that we say, the most vital piece of that whole entire team is CJ Stroud, right? Quarterback CJ Stroud, right? The second most vital part to that team is linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair, because they both are. CJ's the quarterback of the offense. He's the quarterback of the defense.
Right.
He is one of those players that not only knows exactly where the defensive players are supposed to be, but when the offense breaks the huddle, he can look and tell exactly, okay, hey, right here, move, right here, get right here. There's a play. If you go back and you look at the play,
and they moving in unison with
yes.
Is he doing that tap? And it's kind of like the Temptations practice when they was in their little was in like a hallway or a lane. I don't know what it was, but we move at one time in unison.
Yep.
That's special to see.
Oh, for sure, man. And they trust him because he holds them accountable as much as he holds himself accountable. He says, if I study all this time and then I'm not in the right place, now I done got myself in trouble. And now if I'm in trouble, I put my teammates in trouble. And we can't have that. And so he's a key vital part to what they're going to do. I'm going to take you back to Saturday to one play. We talked about Jalen Pitre earlier, right? And we talked about Jalen Pitre getting that pick six, getting that interception, returning it to the house. If you go back and you look at that play, Jalen Pitre has the underneath, of course. Kamari Lassiter drops back. Of course, he got the safety. On the other side, I don't remember if it was a wide receiver, tight end, or whatever. It was a receiver that came out into the formation. Now, last year, and this is no shot at Denzel Perryman, because I like Denzel Perryman, who's no longer here. I think he's with the Chargers now, who was playing that middle linebacker position. The one thing that he was not good at is pass coverage. And he couldn't read and recognize. But that play on Saturday that caused that interception, even though, I know that the defensive lineman caused the pressure. If you go back and you look, Azeez is drifting. He's drifting back and he's drifting back and he's drifting back to the point where he's watching Daniel Jones and he's in his throwing lane. Right. So no matter if he don't even know who's back there. Right. He doesn't even know who's back there. And he doesn't have to worry about the running back because Henry To'oTo'o got the running back. So now all he's doing is just drifting. And he didn't see anybody for the first 5 yards. Oh, okay, so I'm just going to drift back a little bit more. All I need to do is be in the way because I know that these defensive backs are doing their jobs. And if the front four are doing their job, they're going to get the pressure like they did. But to watch him be able to just drift and get into space and watch where the quarterback is going, that's something that I hadn't seen on the Houston Texans defense in a very long time. And so it's just those little type of things that he does that makes him so much better. Will Anderson Jr. said, man, I ain't never really been cussed out by nobody before. He said, Azeez cussed me out because I kept doing something wrong. Right. And he said he was right, though. And it made me go, hey, man, who you talking to? But you're right. So, man, he's very, very vital to that defense.
And again, it goes back to when comparing the greater Texans teams. You got the 2012 Texan team. You got the 2018, 2019 Texan team. And then you got this team. I can't speak to the 2012 Texans team, but I can speak to the more recent Texan team. And one word that floats around now that I didn't hear as much then is accountability.
Yeah.
At every phase. Specialty. You can be the 53rd man on the roster. You can be the practice squad guy. They're going to hold you accountable. And that is what I think why these expectations of making the Super Bowl can be time-stamped, and we can go back and reference it by saying, this is why. Azeez, the growth in Jalen Pitre, All-Pro Derek Stingley. These are some of the things that in year 2 under D'Amico Ryans, you're getting a quarterback at that middle linebacker position. And we haven't seen Christian Harris out there at the same time. You just mentioned the linebacker in the sense of a safety.
Yeah.
And Christian Harris used to play safety.
Yep.
So you look at them being able to take away a lot of those passing lanes by just natural instinct and ability, and then they also ain't scared to get down there and knock your ass out.
Let me say one more thing about Azeez before we move on. John, you ever got hooked up with a job by one of your friends, or you ever got hooked up by a job by one of your cousins or something like that?
Oh yeah.
And so every time you always like, you're not trying to embarrass them. You're not trying to embarrass your cousin.
Yeah.
You're not
You're
trying to
your
embarrass
best
your
behavior.
friend. Right. And you always remember, like, to this day, you probably still got people that you be like, you know what? I appreciate that opportunity that you got me because it propelled me to the next level.
Yeah.
I say that to say this. Azeez was undrafted. D'Amico, when he was in the 49ers, he wanted him. So D'Amico went and got him, brought him in, made him who he was. He went to Tennessee. As soon as that was up, D'Amico got this head coaching job. And what did he say? Hey, man, this year, hey, go get me Azeez. And Azeez is like, I'm grateful for what you did for me. Because, I mean, everybody knows, well, I don't know if everybody knows, but, you know, Azeez's background, he was homeless for a very long time, went to multiple schools, had to sleep in different places, sometimes didn't even know where his next meal was coming from. Just like, he's had a very rough time, and he remembers all those times, makes him to who he is right now. And D'Amico is a part of his journey. So he doesn't just look at D'Amico as his head coach. He doesn't look at D'Amico as a defense coordinator. He doesn't look at D'Amico as a former NFL linebacker. He looks at D'Amico as my friend.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for you giving me this opportunity, so every time he steps on that field, he doesn't just feel like he's representing himself. He doesn't feel like he's just representing his family, but he's also representing D'Amico and the trust that D'Amico put in him.
Can't go back. We got to talk about better performances from the defensive backups. I thought that we got a better look at those guys that Houston needs to figure out on the back end, the talent of some of these players, and if they can hold up for 17 games. So we got more Texans talk on the way. Don't go nowhere. Locked On Texans. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before we dive into it, for your second listen, please enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insight to the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. I won my league last season, and that's because of my family at the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we talk about the reserves, we cannot end off this show without mentioning the first time we got an opportunity to see rookie cornerback in action, Kamari Lassiter. I thought he looked good. I thought he looked damn good. I want to talk about him a little bit more. I want to go back and look at some of the things that allowed him to be successful. One target, one catch for, I think, 10 to 12 yards. But he did some things that I really like when I was watching it live. So I can't wait to go back and see how he was able to help this team out on the back end. I think cornerback 2 is a conversation that's no longer needed. But Sarge, the reserves. We've been talking about some of our concerns, right? The backup cornerbacks, the backup safeties. Even when you look at Denico Autry being out for 6 games, who else can you trust to come in and create some of that pressure? And I was very impressed by Derek Barnett. I was impressed by Barnett last year, but he's just a perfect piece for D'Amico. And this team here in Houston was a big part of why Jalen Pitre was able to get that pick 6, created that pressure on Daniel Jones. But a guy that I don't think we've talked about a lot here on this show and maybe throughout training camp, D'Angelo Ross. One thing I don't want us to overlook is just the amount of snaps the reserve players are getting in these games on the defensive side of the ball. That matters. I think Nick Caserio and D'Amico, they're still trying to figure it out. They have made it known that, well, Nick Caserio, the roster that you guys see right now will not be the final roster. Yeah. They're going to make upgrades. They're going to make changes. So it's important for a lot of these guys to kind of fight for their spot because they don't know if they're going to be here or not, just like any other team. But very few teams like the Houston Texans have Super Bowl aspirations. D'Angelo Ross, I thought, played very well for the Houston Texans. I want to shout him out. 4 targets, only allowed 1 catch for 10 yards. A positive sign for a team that has that secondary concern. Only 1 yak yard at that. He is going to make a case for himself. Don't know if he'll get it, but to make this team. And I got to shout out Tweet Through It, Lonnie Johnson.
Why you call him Tweet Through It?
The first few years in his career, he was in Houston.
Yep.
And it didn't matter what happened. Made a good play, made a bad play. People were criticizing him on Twitter. One thing that I could always count on was Lonnie Johnson tweeting through it.
For sure.
So I've been calling him Tweet Through It for a while, and I know y'all can't wait to call one of our friends Coco, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. Sarge, before we close out, you are a big fan of Marcus Hill, rookie.
Marcus Harris.
Harris.
Marcus Harris and Marcus Harris, defensive tackle out of Auburn, and both of these are rookies. And rookie linebacker Jamal Hill out of Oregon, this is only his second year learning how to play playing the linebacker position. So he's still learning. He's still learning a lot. Real quickly on the backups, John, I'm not going to even lie to you, man. A couple of weeks ago, I get up to go to the gym early in the morning, right? I started to do a little bit, I did start doing a couple of different types of exercise, a little bit more stretching, loosening up my hips a little bit, because I still got a little bit of eligibility left. And I thought that D'Amico was going to have to use me at least on the practice squad, because that defense, them backups looked atrocious. Now, John, I still got 2 years of eligibility left in the NFL. So I thought that, John, during one of those training camp practices, they were running. Hey, you're right. Hey, listen. After graduating from this school, I know I got at least 2-3 years of eligibility left. But I want to say about 3 weeks ago, the Houston, they were practicing. They were still in town. And so they were doing red zone and in goal line, different types of things. And that backup defense looked horrible to the point where D'Amico doesn't hardly show emotions in front of us. He waits till we not around, and then he cuss him out or talk bad to him or whatever the case may be. When we're around, he don't really show too much emotion because he doesn't want that reported. Now, I know for a fact how he talked to him when we not around, and they love it because he's holding them accountable just like Azeez does. But they kept messing up, and at that point, he had enough. And he was upset. That Pittsburgh game, well, hold on. That Hall of Fame game, the backups did not look good. That Pittsburgh game, they did not look good. But one thing that I know about the D'Amico Ryans and his staff, they gonna get down to the bottom of what's causing the issues, what's causing the problems. And I don't know what he did, what he said, or how he did it, but on Saturday, think about it, the defensive starters played less than 15 snaps.
Right.
The New York Giants kept their starters in the entire first half.
Right.
And so even against that, even though I know that Daniel Jones was, I don't know, 9 of 12 for I think maybe 100 yards, something like that, with the backups, but he still was struggling to score with the backups, and they were still struggling to move the ball on the backups. And I was very impressed. I said, okay, somewhere down the line, D'Amico has talked to them and told them, hey, y'all better watch out because Sarge over there, he gonna take one of y'all places.
Thank y'all for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Shout out to Ali Gay, excuse me. I thought he's been playing better this year as well.
Khalil Davis.
Man, I don't even consider Khalil a reserve. KD94 is my dog, and I think he's doing a phenomenal job. And I also wonder who's going to be the Khalil Davis for this team this year. That's a conversation we got to have at a later time. But please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, shoot me a follow, John_Hickman12 on Twitter. Sarge, not only your podcast work, but your writing work as well. Where can everybody find you? Amazing.
You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Sarge Sports with the Z at the end. You can follow me on the Tick and the Talk at Big Sarge Media, YouTube, Big Sarge Media, and make sure you're reading all my articles on www.bigsargemedia.com. Cell phone and operated.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.